Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Aish, and in this video I'm just going to be telling you how to book a driving test in the UK in 2025. So you're probably here because you can't book a driving test, and that was me a couple of months ago. It is really hard to get driving tests in the UK right now, but there are a couple different tips, tricks and tools that you can use to get one. I'm going to start with the trick that everyone probably knows, which is logging onto the DVSA booking system at 6 AM on a Monday, or before 6 AM on a Monday, because that's when new test slots are released. The problem with this is that those test slots are in 6 months, and everyone knows this trick, so everyone is trying to do it, so there is a big queue, so it is not even guaranteed you're going to get one in 6 months. What you can do though is make a booking at any test centre, and that allows you to use a couple different methods. Just make sure the booking you make is not in a couple of days, and you have time to cancel it if you don't succeed elsewhere. So if you've got a booking, that means you can use cancellation apps, and I've used a couple different cancellation apps. I've not changed my test with any of these apps, but I did find that they had different ways of working. So the first app I tried was Testi, and that basically, like, you put in your test, you put in your details, and you tell it what centre you want, and it will let you know when there's availability at that test centre. The problem with Testi is that by the time you click that slot, it's usually gone. But I have seen some people speak highly of it. Testi, as far as I know, is just a one-time payment, but it is a payment. Another app I tried was called TestShift, and this looked really promising at first, but it didn't yield me anything. Not even notifications of tests that I could do and just didn't do or whatever, whereas Testi did, but I don't know how many of those tests Testi showed me would have actually followed through if I'd clicked them. Every time I did try and click them, things were gone, but it did show me a lot more than I clicked. TestShift is a paid app, so that is a bit of a downside, especially if it's not going to give you any results. But again, I have heard good things about it, which is why I tried it. Another app I tried, and this seemed the most promising to me, was Test Hunter, which I think on the App Store is called something like Driving Cancellations or whatever. That is a weekly subscription, I think, although there may be a free version that just doesn't let you put in a load of info, but that seemed promising. That showed me things, but also it was then really easy to then log into the DVSA website and, you know, change one. The only one it did offer me though, I didn't want. So maybe that was before I actually subscribed. I can't remember. I didn't have any success with cancellation apps, but I see a lot of people on social media and on Reddit and things like that having success with them. So I don't know if it's because I'm in London and there's just too much demand there, or because of the particular test centre I wanted, which was Wanstead. Wanstead is one of the main test centres in East London. There are other sites I've tried, and also there is a Chrome plugin that seems to have success for some people. I actually got the paid version, which I think was like £4, and it's attached to your email address, so then if you've got siblings you can use it for them, but it didn't find me anything. Again, I don't know if it's because I'm in London or because of my test centre or what, but sometimes it does time out. But it seemed like a fairly low cost way to look for a cancellation, so I gave it a try, and the reviews looked pretty good because other people were finding tests and the developer was refunding people that weren't happy with it. But I don't feel like it's the developer's fault that I didn't find a test. The biggest confusion I have with these cancellation apps, despite other people's successes, is that sometimes I would get a notification of a cancellation on one app but the other app wouldn't tell me, or vice versa. Like Test Hunter would tell me of a cancellation that Testi hasn't told me about, or whatever. So I think there are pros and cons to both of them, but also maybe an advantage of having multiple. But those costs add up, but they are negligible to some of the other costs. But before I get into those, let me go on to another method, which is if you've got a test booked wherever it is, the other option you have is test swaps. So there are Reddits, there are probably other kinds of social media groups, there are WhatsApp groups and stuff for test swaps. And if you find one in your area, or even just ask your instructors, other students and stuff, maybe you can get a test that way. I don't feel like it's the easiest way, but I think some people have success. The last method, and for me this has been the only way I managed to get a test both times I've had a driving test, and that was using people who sell cancellation tests. These are expensive, but they are often included in intensive courses. So if you're going to do a bunch of lessons anyway, you might as well pay for 10 of that bunch out of an intensive course if they're going to book you a test at the end of the course anyway. That's how I got my first test. And then my second test, I was basically put in a WhatsApp group with someone offering cancellation tests, and you just kind of say, yeah, me, when you see one that you can do and your instructor can do. But it's all very quick in having to pay. It's easy to pay up front, and it is a lot to pay. But for me, I felt that the money I spent to get a test quicker, one, meant that I didn't have to constantly monitor all the apps and have the anxiety associated with that, but two, meant that I wasn't spending so long doing driving lessons, so I saved the money on that. For me, it still took me a while to find a test, but that was more to do with mine and my instructor's availability rather than the lack of tests. But for this, I do recommend knowing your instructor's availability before going into this, because then when you see one, you don't need to check with them because there isn't time. Like, the tests are on timers. I do think it is fucked that people profit off the backlog for driving tests in the UK, but I also think it is convenient. And if you have the money, convenience wins. But yeah, it is fucked that people profit off it, and fucked that people who don't have the money can then not get a test. In my experience of the group I was in, I think the person who put me in that group was still a middleman. So I think if you get higher up the chain of who is actually getting the cancellation tests, you might not have to spend so much extra to get them. So like, you might not have to spend so much more than the cost of the test itself. So like, when I got a cancellation test as part of an intensive course, I had the 10 hours of lessons with the intensive course, and you know, they booked the test. And if you take away the cost of 10 hours of lessons pay as you go, you're left with 280, which included the price of the test, which is £62. So you're paying an extra £220. That was for my first test. And then for my second test, I went one middleman up. So I went to the person the intensive course people go to, and I was paying £200, which is still £140 more than you're actually paying. But I know that person is getting those tests from someone else, and that someone else is not just offering those tests to that person, which is why it's kind of competitive. But if you got to the person one rung up, you'd probably knock off a bit more, but I don't know how you do that. So those are the options that I feel like are available to people. You can also just use these apps, the websites, the plugins and whatever, to constantly look yourself. And I see people get success like that, and I don't know why I didn't find success like that. It wasn't that I wasn't trying, I'm not really sure. I didn't actually know any of these apps or these tricks or whatever when I first started looking for a test. So I hope this video will bring someone some insight and someone will get a test out of it. I'm not affiliated with any of these apps or anything, and as I said, none of them have brought me success, but I'm not saying you should try this or this. I'm just telling you what the options are and what I've had success with and what I haven't had success with. And I kind of hate that the only thing I've actually had success with is forking out the £200 or whatever to pay someone, but it is the way the world is right now. What I will say though is this Chrome plugin that didn't work for me, like, yes, there's a paid version, but it is free. Like, you can try the free version and just see if you get anything off that, and that's kind of what persuaded me to get it. And then when I saw it was only £4 for the pro version and it would make it a lot easier, I thought, fuck it, let's do that. For me, it feels far less fucked for some individual that's built a tool to help you do something get paid for it, even though they're kind of still profiting off the backlog, than it is for someone to literally be paid for it just because they know the right people. At least the plugin gives you some kind of means to try and do it yourself. I have heard though that even those cancellation test groups are drying up, so I'm not sure what anyone's supposed to do once they can't get a test. But yeah, with all these things, look at the reviews, look at what people say about them. With any kind of groups you join or whatever, be very careful about who you're giving like that kind of sensitive data to, like your driving license number, etc. If you do have any success with any of these methods because you watched this video, it would be great if you can come back and comment below. But yeah, that is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video and you're learning to drive, you might enjoy my learning to drive series, which I'll put on the screen somewhere. And if not, then thanks for watching anyway.